Hello, everybody. This is Lynn and Otter back. I'm actually recording the next episode the same day, so again, this is just part of kind of like the experiment I wanted to try, kind of adjusting my upload schedule and seeing some things to see what helps videos get a little bit more, a little more views and all that. But I am, and I mean, honestly, I'm kind of glad because I did want to keep going where we left off last time. I want to continue what we're going to do now that we've learned about some of the origin of the this apocalypse, or at least the first day of it. I wonder if we'll learn more about the what do you call it? Learn more about the like the beginnings of the beginning times when it all first started. All right, Xavier seems like a nice kid. Oh, excuse me. Oh, he had said everyone could use a little more of that kind of outlook, myself included, which was him talking about wanting to be on the side that tries to make the world better again, which is very nice and admirable. Same here. I hope to be there with you too, kid. For now, though, anything else you want to ask? Just one more question, as I'm sure I won't like the answer either, and I'll need some time to process everything you've told me. What is that monster we fought? I think you called it something that started with an F? The Fated. He snapped and shot me finger guns. That's the one. Well, he was right about the first part. The answer to this wasn't something he'd like, and wasn't one I'd like either. Oh boy. This is another heavy one, so I suggest you steel yourself. As always, there isn't a full explanation I can provide, but there are some things I can tell you for certain. Are you ready? Xavier took a moment before nodding to go ahead. To keep it simple, the Fated are people. Or at least they used to be. It was another cruel effect from the apocalypse. A few weeks after the initial incident, everyone was waiting for some kind of help. There were many injured hoping to be treated, others trying to find lost family. They waited and waited, but after a while it started to become clear no help was coming. It was at that point that the first Fated emerged. A small encampment of survivors had gathered together, hoping that somehow they'd find a savior amongst them. Instead, they were met with a gurgle of their own blood, choking out their prayers as the creatures slashed at their throats. More began to appear after that, seemingly out of nowhere. It wasn't until two friends were together that the change was first witnessed. One of them had watched their partner die before them a few days prior, and it broke them. The friend tried comforting her, but she was too lost in her own grief. They woke up in the night to see their grieving friend beginning to change, taking on a more monstrous form and an insatiable bloodlust. They tried calling out to her, but it was too late, their voice landing on deaf ears. That's why we call them the Fated. They're nothing more than husks of their former selves, losing all aspects that once gave them heart. They came in a variety of shapes and sizes, each with their own defining traits and displaying varying levels of intelligence. It's rare you'll find two of the same kind, however, which is both a blessing and a curse. No matter what, though, it's best to avoid them at all costs. We were lucky to have made it out alive today. Most share a worse fate. I took my gaze off my feet and back to Xavier, who was staring at his own now. It wasn't something easy to learn about. I even had trouble believing it when I first heard it. What must hurt the most was the fact that we had killed something that had once been a person. Someone like us. When I crawled my way over to his side of the tent, draping an arm across his shoulders, I probably could have spared some of the gorier details, but it was important he knew what he was up against, what these creatures really were and what they were capable of. He leaned in towards me, needing this much more than I did. I no longer had any suspicions that he'd been faking anything he told me. Xavier would need an ally in this world, someone he could trust. Right now, I had to be that person for him. As we sat there, I could feel exhaustion pulling at me once more. my body not quite done in its recovery despite having slept several hours. It occurred to me that I hadn't actually checked what time it was. I reached over to my pack and began to rummage around inside it, searching for the item I was after. It only took a few moments before I found it, a small golden pocket watch. I removed it from my pack and began to turn it over in my hands. Flipping it open, I see the small hand pointing towards the 6, the minute hand, 12:15. So, bit past 6 o'clock? That meant I'd been out for nearly 7 hours now. No wonder Xavier had been worried about me. Before closing it, I run my thumb across our engraved initials inside. The emotions beginning to bubble up. It was a gift from Marshall that he'd given me for my last birthday before the apocalypse. I smiled at the memory. I'd told him not to get me anything that year, but my wolf always liked to rebel against things like that. I'll never forget the line he said when he gave it to me, one that was corny as hell. To help you keep track of all the time spent lost in my... Oh, to help you keep track of all the time spent lost in my eyes. There was a small pang in my heart at that, but I closed the pocket watch and returned my attention back towards my companion. Alright, I think that's enough for now. I have a few things to do, but I would appreciate it if you got a head start on the fire for us. Think you can manage that? He gave me a small nod of acknowledgement, remaining seated. I went back over to my pack and grabbed the few things I'd need, taking the fire starting supplies and leaving them next to Xavier. Whenever you're ready. Opening the flaps of the tent, I was now able to get a view of the aftermath of the fight. Scattered debris aside, the place seemed relatively the same, the only signs of fighting being the now dried blood that coated the ground. As I'd seen a glimpse of earlier, the site was now illuminated by the dull glow of the twilight sky. The remaining rays of warm light were just bright enough that I could move on to the task at hand. There were bodies that needed to be investigated. Oh, right. I made my way over to the faded first, the now unmistakable reek of death overpowering my nose the closer I got. Opening one of my journals, I started my inspection of the corpse. No reason additional external damage seemed to present itself that wasn't resulting from our fight. However, there were a few scars across its body that had long since healed. Just those few facts alone already told me some things. The first was that this had been an older faded, not one that had been around since the start, but not a fresh victim to the transformation either. The second was that we clearly had not been its first quarry. There was no telling just how many it had killed during its reign, but at least some had a fighting chance. Lastly, the creature had not fed in a while. Comparing the lack of prior wounds to the fragile state it seemed to be in, skin tied around the elongated bones, gave me the picture that the fight with us had been out of desperation and greed. There was still more info that I needed to glean before I could establish a proper theory, so I continued my investigation. Nothing else seemed to be out of the ordinary, and I was about to move on when I noticed a splash of color near its mouth. Red. Leaning in closer, I could make out traces of blood near the two fangs I had seen earlier. Making a mental note of that, I walked over to my next task. As I approached the second body, the stench of death began to lessen. In fact, there was barely a trace of it coming from the polar bear. I was able now to get a better look at the man since the impending threat had been reduced to a rotting mound. He appeared to be mid-30s, clothes and fur covered in a layer of grime he'd likely picked up from traveling. From the way his clothes hung off of him, he could have easily been written off as skinny. However, it seemed as though his fur was unnaturally baggy, as well despite it having a healthy sheen. The tree branch he was impaled on had a distinct lack of blood on it. Only a few trickles dried into the wood. This was definitely a secondary wound, one received after death. Oh! Moving the body off the branch, it only took me a few seconds to find what I'd been looking for. Bingo. On the back of his neck were 2 puncture marks, the clothing just below it having soaked up a bit of blood. Just as I thought, the creature had bitten him and sucked the moisture from his body. The missing fluids explained why he looked deflated and lacked the smell of rot, the bacteria having a harder time feasting on dried flesh. The pieces of the puzzle had now fallen into place. Faded don't have a tendency to venture out this far, usually preferring to remain in the ruins that was once a thriving city. It had either struggled to find life or had been driven out of its territory by another of its kind. Starving, it had made its way out here on a whim. Enter the creature's stroke of luck where the polar bear had appeared. Sneaking up on the unsuspecting victim, the monster seized the opportunity and bit down, draining the hydration from the man. Oh my gosh, what a way to go. Then nearby it spotted my camp. It must have believed today was a miracle, the possibility of more food driving its greed. It laid the trap then, placing the polar bear against a tree and triggering the alarm. Whether on purpose or by accident, I couldn't know. It waited in the shadows then, overconfidence dousing its corrupt mind as it hoped to play with its food. Unfortunately for it, there had been two of us, and we gained the upper hand. I couldn't possibly know how much of my assessment had been accurate, but it helped me process it all, making it easier to handle this as if I were a TV detective. I was going to say, this guy was pulling out the Sherlock Holmes and the, whatever other popular detectives. Elementary, my dear Xavier. It allowed me a sliver of separation from reality, something much needed. There was still one question on my mind, though, and that was why the man was nearby in the first place. Searching the body, I began to rifle through his pockets for a clue about his identity. They were mostly empty, aside from a few basic survival items like a pocket knife. Opening his jacket led me to what I was looking for. Sewn in just below the collar with a golden thread was a symbol of a house with its door open. Something I recognized. A symbol of haven. Symbol of haven. It took about 2 hours, and it was relatively shallow, but I managed to dig a grave for the fallen bear. Aww. Although I didn't know him, he still deserved as best of a burial as I could give him. That's very nice. I agree. I had taken a moment to cut the symbol out of his jacket, deeming that it would be useful later on. The sun had finally vanished from the sky, leaving most things lit by the moon. The campsite, however, was embraced by the warm light of our fire, successfully lit by Xavier, who was seated nearby. I walked over and sat next to him quietly. He seemed to be doing better now, but there was more of a weight on his shoulders, the invisible burden of the newfound knowledge dragging at him a bit. I'm not surprised. How are you holding up? I know you've got a lot on your mind after today. And I think we're going to call it here. My alarm's about to go off, so I'm going to save. All right, so we did some detective work today. That's definitely good. And good on what's his name? good on Dorian. He's a resourceful fellow. He's pretty good. I don't think I managed this well in the apocalypse, so that's interesting to see. But anyway, hope you guys like this episode. Hope you have a good day. Again, I feel like I gotta try and get more comfortable with doing the whole, reminding you guys if you'd like to leave likes or comments. Comments are definitely very appreciated too. I love the suggestions that I can get about what visual novels I should do. But yeah, if you don't forget to subscribe. I've got the social medias. I got the social medias all over the place. got your Twitters. I got your TikToks. I got your Instagrams and your snap chattings. Whatever you kids are doing these days. I got them all. Well, no, I don't. But I do have a Twitter too. I think that one's doing pretty well too. So feel free to follow me on Twitter too. All right, all of this you can find me as Linen Otter. Twitch too. There we go. Anyway, all right, enough promotion. You guys have a good day. Hope you liked it. I'm really curious about where the story's going to go, and I want to continue this soon. And let me know if you guys like the shorter video format. These episodes are going to stick around 10-ish minutes, a little under the 15 minutes for sure. So yeah, let me know what you guys think. Hope you guys have a good day. See you next time. Take care.